Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of Cheltenham Chart. 4 weeks to go to the festival. You are in the final throes of clues for Cheltenham now. The ground was extremely soft at most meetings this week. A lot of the horses we're going to touch on have won by wide margins in races where you don't know how many horses have actually handled the ground and what they've beaten. It's a time in the season to be very careful, but of course we're all just looking for clues and we want to have seen something that other people may not have seen. It's very, very difficult now to assess what we've got. What we definitely have is a very, very open Cheltenham festival, and it is going to be a festival of many, many opinions, very, very differing opinions as well. I mean, I can speak to my friends and fancy virtually none of the horses they fancy. Well, that's a far cry from 2 years ago or 3 years ago or certain years. Willie Mullins will have a lot of winners at the meeting, but he's not getting it all his own way this season, that's certain. He's not getting it all his own way in Ireland. Dan Skelton looks to have prepped his horses really well for Cheltenham. Nicky's going with a big challenge. It's not going to be easy to win any of these races at Cheltenham this season, and you have to be cautious. But if you really do fancy one and you do think you've seen something that others have seen, you've got to be quick and you've got to get in and you've got to get the bet off. So I'll just get on to what I feel I've seen this week. I'll talk about the horses that I've watched this week, and you can give me your opinions in the comments below. Over the next couple of weeks I'm going to be watching, waiting for the handicap entries to go in, and then we can work from there and work out where we're going to go really with bets for the rest of the bank for Cheltenham. So I hope you enjoy my views. I know they're not going to be the views of many because everyone's going to differ, like I said, on most of these horses going into Cheltenham. As I said, you have to be on your guard, you never know. And after the DRF, I'd completely forgotten that Old School Outlaw was going to run the next day at Fairyhouse. And just by chance, I put the racing on a bit later than I normally would have, but I put it on and it was only about 20 minutes to the race. She's already beaten the favourite, Bambino Fever. Everyone will say that Bambino Fever was on its first run over hurdles and it will reverse the form. But Old School Outlaw came out here in the Sol Arena, beat probably an inferior stablemate of Bambino Fever's here in Place de Nation, but beat her well, beat her up. I thought beat her up. And after the race, Hills were still offering 6 to 1. I think they'd maybe forgotten the race was on as well. So I took advantage of that price and had an each way bet. I would struggle to see her out the 3 after this win and beating the favourite. It was a nice win. I thought she was really impressive. The way she quickened away after the last and, hit the line quite hard. So you just have to be wary. You never know when these horses are going to pop up. You should be watching all the declarations, but for some reason this one slipped by me just about, but I caught it just on. So in a lot of the races I'll back a couple if I think the odds are good. I've backed Old School Outlaw now. That's not a bet for the videos or anything like that. It was never a big enough price it didn't stay a big enough price for long enough to even attempt a bet. But it was nice to get had in the book. The next day, I was going to try and get Vanillia in the book with Favori de Champdou, and it slipped my mind that the race was so early. 12 o'clock start, and I'd already asked a friend of mine to put a couple of bets off for me a couple of days ago. I don't like bothering him too much. The best price was where he can only get on and I can't. And one thing led to another, and I never backed Vanillier. No, it wouldn't have been a heavy bet. It was just a sort of cover bet, but 25 to 1 quickly became 12s, and that's not where you want to play. So, yeah, there's no cover bet on Vanillier. And he ran a good race in the cross country last year. He got really badly done at the start and still finished third. So he was one that I wanted to have a little bit of cover on, but the price isn't really good enough now to be playing on him at the moment. I do think he'll have a chance because Cromwell really isn't going to have a lot of stabs at many races this season, I wouldn't think, at Cheltenham. The horses are still in the main not running brilliant even after that treble at Gowran Park. I mean, they're running better, but I wouldn't say they're firing on all cylinders yet. So that was a bit disappointing. And the other horse to talk about at that meeting was Fill Your Eye. But it's one of these Willie Mullins wide margin winners. I mean, it would only be a Bartlett horse because it ran over 2 miles 7. Very impressive, but how many of these do we get where they just run away with their maiden hurdle and you don't know how good they are? You can't back them for another race at the moment, but extremely good in this win. It's just you don't know what they're like in behind. It's very difficult to judge what they've beaten, and so you have to just wait. It could be that this is going to be on the way to the Bartlett, but do you think it'll beat Dr. Steinberg and other horses? That's very difficult to judge. So at the moment, it's just a horse I've mentioned, but I wouldn't be getting involved at the moment. On to Thursday, Act of Innocence. My bet for the Supreme will not be going to the Supreme. Won the Sydney Banks in good style, but I think you have to be very straight. You know, you have to have a straight bet. You have to really get away from the bet on the Supreme and think about this now. Can it win the Turners? For me, I didn't see enough in this win. Now, it was an easy win, and Nicky Henderson was glowing after the race because he hadn't had a hard race. So he's won 2 hurdles races now, been beaten by Manila Yoga, giving away £20, which doesn't look that bad in the cold light of day, but looked bad at the time. I just didn't see enough in this win, as good as it was. They were glowing, and they would know far more about the horse. I just don't know if I could back this for the Turners. I think this was supposed to be the 2 miler. I'm not so sure he saw it out quite as well as I'd have liked to have seen, although he didn't do anything wrong. I'm just not sure that he's a Turner's winner. He could be a Turner's 3rd or 4th, but I'm not convinced he's a Turner's winner. I think when you back these horses earlier in the season, then you want your judgment to be right. You want to believe that you've got it right. And I perhaps didn't. I was a bit too eager on the trigger on Mistle Park Star. And I don't want to just judge Act of Innocence as if, because I'm on him, just stick on that horse and just blindly go down that alley. I'm not convinced that this horse can win the Turners as good as he ran. So I would probably leave him alone until a lot closer to the race. Another 2 wide margin winners for Willie Mullins on the day were Salvatore Monday and also Lawrence d'Estraval. They're very difficult to judge. Salvatore Monday, not so much. He was beaten by Kappa J. Pike first time out, and he's probably not quite up to Arkle level. Lawrence d'Estraval, like the winner Fill Your Eye, you just don't know quite what that form amounts to. So you've got to be very careful with it and just take it with a pinch of salt, unless you really know something and this horse is better than we think. Then you've just got to wait for another run or see where they put it and go from there. On Friday, I was contemplating a bet for the videos, and I wasn't sure what horse I wanted to back in the Arkle, but I had this feeling I wanted to get involved in the Arkle. Copic de boards, I don't know. I'm hearing all these wonder stories about how brilliant he is now, but it just makes me more inclined to think he isn't going to run. The more they big him up, the more I think he ain't going to run. I still think he should go in the champion hurdle anyway, even if he does run at Cheltenham. But the more I hear them glow about the horse, the more I think, no, he's not going to run. Because I don't trust that yard at all. When they've got an injured horse, they'll tell you nothing. They'll tell you absolutely nothing, and they will, we'll leave it at that. But I'll believe this horse is running when I see it at the track at the moment. So I was looking for an Arkle bet. And I was between Capajay Pike and Steel Ally, and I really like Steel Ally. So I was out with Alison on Friday, but I was really desperate to try and get to Ladbrokes. And when she said she was going to go for a coffee, and the coffee shop was happy to allow dogs in, I thought, I'll get to that Ladbrokes. Now it's a wee bit away, but I thought I'll get to the Ladbrokes so she goes for the coffee. You know, you guys know what it's like. You know, I wasn't exactly popular for this decision. But I trudged my way to the top of this hill to get to this Ladbrokes, you know, and I'm not exactly a slim lad, like, so I'm out of breath when I get there. And Steel Ally's price has gone from 33s to 20s in the 12 minutes it took me to get there. I was absolutely destroyed. I was like, no, I do not believe that. I said, I'm not taking 20s. I can get better than that on the exchanges, so I'm not backing it now and I'm not putting it up on the videos. Now, thankfully, the money I had for the bet, I put it on Steel Ally to win on Saturday 11 to 10, which didn't get exactly a huge return, but made me feel better. And I didn't get into too much trouble for missing the coffee shop, but I was raging when I got to the top of that hill, you can imagine. I'm out of breath, needing oxygen just about, and then the prices changed, so I wasn't too pleased. In the race itself, Steel Ally won easy, but I was disappointed with his jumping. He'd just been absolutely fabulous in his first two starts jumping, and maybe it was because he'd gone right-handed. Now, he didn't make mistakes. I just felt like he wasn't jumping as fluently as he had at Carlisle and Ascot. I was a little bit disappointed with him, but he's absolutely bolted in the race itself. Mambo number 5's either not run his race or just been forced into mistakes. He's thrashed Mirabad, but I think a lot of people knew that Mirabad was just out there really to get a handicap mark, and he'll win either at Cheltenham or Aintree in a 2 mile handicap chase. But Steel Ally, I wasn't blown away. I thought he would win this easier. I was a little bit disappointed, and I certainly wouldn't put him up at 14s at the moment. I do think he's a good horse, and I think his jumping gets horses into trouble. And although he didn't jump as well as I hoped on Saturday, he still got the others into trouble. I think he's a really good horse. He's improved a lot for fences. He's better than Lump Sam, that's for absolute sure. I do like him, just don't know if I want to put him up in the Arkle, especially not at 14 to 1. Horses to mention from Naas. Highland Crystal beat Saratoga, and I know everybody is just thinking that this Saratoga now is the JP plunge horse for the Boodles Fred Winter. I don't know now. This Highland Crystal's Wood 2 Mark 2 just does enough, and she's gone right across the track here and still won. I know that Saratoga was in absolutely no rush to win, don't get me wrong, I'm absolutely under no illusions about that, but I still think this Highland Crystal could be a lot better than people give it credit for. Wood, who did this all through her 4-year-old career over hurdles, just winning. People were conned into thinking she wasn't that good. And then when she came out last season, we saw how good she was. So I'd be very careful about writing off Highland Crystal and also Mansef, who wasn't exactly trying his hardest for me. So yes, this is the plot race for the Boodles, Fred Winter, and I know a lot of people think that it's just as easy as Saratoga, but I'm not totally convinced that it is just about Saratoga. I did have this thought about backing Panic Attack for the Mare's Chase, but I was hoping to see Dino Blue have a bit more of a workout than she got. Absolutely bolted in. She's going to be hard to beat in that Mare's Chase. She's not a fashionable horse at all, but she's sitting there at 6-4, and although I want to take her on, she's more than likely to be even shorter on the day. I want to take this horse on, but she gave me no encouragement yesterday to take her on at all. The Fox Hunters, Panda Boy, won convincingly in the end, beating Hunter Sharn. He's the sort of horse that could do well in Hunter chases, but I'm not prepared to get involved at 8-1. I think he's worth a mention because he's always been in and around these top handicaps without actually taking many of them out. But the Fox Hunters could be a place where he may just flourish. So we have to talk about him and mention him. Nace on Sunday I'm inserting into the video, so you will have Newbury after this. Just a couple of horses to mention really. Sanouche won the Mare's Novice really easily. Over 2 miles forward. I'm not convinced that this horse will go to the Mare's Novice at Cheltenham, but she is worth mentioning. Staffordshire Knot won the Boyne Hurdle. Is entered in the Pertemps, would be, I would imagine, very, very close to top weight. Having a great season and running really well every race at the moment, you couldn't totally write him off even off top weight. He's certainly running a lot better than he was last season, and he cost a lot of money. It would be a big ask to win a Pertemps off, I think he must be 150 plus, so yeah, it'd be difficult to win off that sort of mark, but he's having a great season and he's picking up a lot of pots. Oscar's brother, he won the grade 2 10 up, and he absolutely romped in. He won he could have gone round again. I think he won that easy. Now he's beaten the horse that Final Demand beat in Limerick, and he's done it very, very easily, but obviously he's going to try and go to the Brown Advisory or maybe the Irish National now. But the horse who was the eye catcher, and you sort of have to laugh at some of these horses, because if you don't laugh, you'll be wondering how things actually go in horse racing. But the Wall Park all season, he's had a few questionable runs. A lot of people saying he can't jump and things like that. He stayed on very eye-catchingly, let's say, in a second. He's very short for the National Hunt Chase, but I think this time they maybe made it a bit too obvious, and I don't think he'll make it now. I don't think he'll come in at under 145, to be honest. I just don't think that finishing like that he's going to get in at under 145. He may get in at under 145. Who knows with the rest of his form, but he'd be very much on the edge. Let's just say if he got in, I don't think he'll be a very good price for the National Hunt Chase or the Kinmure should he get 145 or less. That's all I'll say on that. It's yeah. Some of the handicapping the horses really is getting to quite a stage now when you see some of these things going on, and yeah, some of his runs this season I would question, especially for a horse who finished third in this year's hurdle last season. Anyway, I'll just get on to Newbury from yesterday and I'll get this video up. On to Newbury yesterday, and I won't be popular for a lot of my views. At Newbury, I'm not convinced about what I saw at Newbury, to be honest. Newbury proved how difficult Ante-post betting is. There's absolutely no question in my mind that Let It Rain is absolutely thrown in off 1-2-4. And clearly I've had my fingers burnt. But you bet weeks before you get a good price, but you can't account for a deluge of rain and the ground being like it was. And you just have to say to yourself, is it worth it? Because if you'd known that, you'd have never put the bet off. So you're sitting there with a value bet that can pay for your week's shopping, maybe 2 weeks shopping, whatever, and fill the car with petrol. And you've just put it on, and before the race you've got virtually no chance. Unless this horse, luckily, goes in the ground. So when I'm putting the Cheltenham bets off and I've got 30% of my bank off, it is a dangerous place to be because I still don't know what the ground's going to be like at Cheltenham. And it's why a lot of people, although they want to play Ante-post, it is dangerous. It is dangerous. You've also got the possibility that a horse who's just about good enough to run the champion hurdle could be in there off 138 instead of 160. So, yeah, be careful with Ante-post. I know that my viewers are very shrewd guys, but it just proves, and I'm only saying, I don't tend to talk about when I win, but like when I lose, you do have to talk about why. And this was a case of just me getting carried away with a good price, and I got my fingers burnt for it. On to the races themselves at Newbury. Sober Glory was really impressive again. Now the worry with this horse is he went up in grade. He's obviously not run his race against Hurricane Sandown, but is he one of these soft lead merchants? Has to get soft lead or he can't do it. Does he have to be a soft lead in a small field? I don't know. This was a really impressive win. And if he hadn't run at Sandown, you'd be thinking he could possibly run a big race in the Supreme. He was 4 minutes 9. I think Tutti Quanti was 4 minutes 13, but the ground was deteriorating and the bumper was 4 minutes 18. Obviously, we're not jumping any hurdles, so yeah, the ground was clearly getting a lot worse through the day, so you can't take the times for anything. Sober Glory was really impressive. It's just that in this ground, there was a lot of wide margin winners. I'm not inclined to take the I'm not saying that he's not as good as he's looked. I just don't know how you can take this form forward and say he is as good as he's looked. There are supreme outsiders to look at. He'd be one. Idaho Sun would be another. A lot of people still like my Daddy Paddy. For me, I didn't like what I saw when he came off the bridle and push came to shove, and be a leap of faith to take him back into it. Now, it wouldn't be a leap of faith. I can understand why people would go Idaho Sun. I can understand why people would go Sober Glory. I just wonder that they're going to have to go a long way up from what they've achieved already. People won't like my next view. I know British people want British winners, and I do think Lulamba's a good horse, but even money for the Arkle wouldn't tempt me in. His jumping isn't as good as people make out. He's exactly like Romeo Coolio. He needs a bit further. I just think he could get taken out of his comfort zone by Irish Panther and Cargeezy early, and if he makes a couple of mistakes, he could quite easily, he's just not an even shot or a 5-4 shot. I can't have him at that price. I mean, I know that both the horses who cost me last season, I am bitter about not getting the 8 profits in a row. And I know that I pick on Final Demand and Lulamba because of it, but I don't think he's done enough to be 5-4 favourite for the Arkle. He's got that acceleration, I'll give you that, but I just don't see what he's beating to give him that price. He's a good horse. I just wouldn't make him 5-4. Someone said to me they've seen people talk about him as a possible champion hurdle candidate. I would say that Copic de Board, looking at what happened later in this meeting, would be the one that I would be wanting to go in a champion hurdle. I think he'd be an even, maybe not even money Copic de Board, but he wouldn't be more than 2-1 for a champion hurdle if he went there. If he's fully fit, of course, because I've already said I want to see him before I part with any money. Haiti Colours, 7-1 for the Gold Cup. No, thank you. I don't think Lahon Press has run his race here. He just didn't seem right. He didn't seem happy. I don't know if he wanted to lead and Charlie Deutsch didn't let him lead. I don't know if it's because it was too quick a run after only 2 weeks against Spillane Tower at Cheltenham. Whatever, from an early stage, I was thinking Lahon Press isn't going to win here, and that's why I can't have Haiti Colours, because he's just beaten nothing here. As soon as you take Lahon Press out of this race, the race was over. And so, for me, I can't have Haiti Colours to win a Gold Cup. I just can't have him. A lot of people say that he's won this, he's won that, he's won the next, Irish Nationals, Welsh Nationals, etc., etc. And he's won a Denman Chase now. But I think that was a nothing race yesterday. And my personal opinion, I cannot have Haiti Colours for the Gold Cup. And the final one is Tutti Quanti. Now, when you look at this, it had all the hallmarks. Hindsight is a very, very good thing. And after getting my fingers singed badly, you look back and you say, Tutti Quanti, massive gamble, last time up, only went up £8, gambling owner, Paul Nicholls, Harry Cobden. They say it worked incredibly. Didn't tell anyone, of course, but they say it worked incredibly. And the gamble started not quite since the betting opened, but certainly in the last 2 weeks they have been punting it. And it's just absolutely won in a walk. It is absolutely thrashed, this lot. I'd back this if it got £10. I'd back it in the county hurdle. But it's not Don Skelton horse, so it's probably likely to get more like £14 to £16. I don't know. How do you quantify this? I mean, they've just won with an £8 hike. They've gambled the horse from 16s to 2s. overnight they've backed us after getting that £8 hike. They've backed it from 9 to 1 to 7 to 2, and it's won the richest handicap hurdle in Britain by 16 lengths, I think. So you're going to get hammered. It's got to get hammered for that sort of. But if it didn't get hammered, now if it was Dan Skelton's, it probably wouldn't. I don't know what goes on there, but his horses seem to get preferential treatment for me. I mean, you're not supposed to say that, but they do. I wonder, I see the marks of some of these horses and I'm like, how is that only got a panic attack? Anyway, yeah. But I'm trying to take advantage of that this season by looking for the plots. And yeah, that worked out well yesterday. But Tutti Quanti was unbelievable. And the bumper winner was impressive as well. But I just don't know if you can take this form forward when they're winning that easy. It's and a lot of horses won't like the ground. I mean, Let It Rain. I'm trying to plot our way through the season now, and I can see where I can back her, but I've got to be careful because what happened yesterday can happen again. You can get a deluge, you can get a strange result, you can be up against a horse like Tutti Quanti, who's just improved out of all recognition this season. Would he win a champion hurdle? Probably not, but he was only 6th. That's why I'm thinking, well, Copic de Board won it and thrashed him. So, yeah, if Copic went, then you'd be thinking, yeah, I'm going to go in here. But Tutti Quanti, not so convinced. But boy, he was impressive. And if he didn't get a huge hike for this, he'd be a thought for the county hurdle for sure. But there'll be a lot of plots in that, and Malins will have a few, and lots of others will have a few. So it's game on now, 4 weeks to go, and you know, it's a lot of races, extremely open. I'm looking for bets, but I think in truth you've got to wait for now for the handicap entries, and then to see where you think horses might go and how they might pan out from here. An interesting week, but certainly nothing like the DRF. As the DRF left so many questions, it is hard to, in the week after, try and answer them. I think we'll be drip fed targets for horses, and we can see from there. Anyway, I'll be back to you next week. I haven't done, well, actually, I may actually just add in Navan today before the section on Newbury, so it may actually be in the video. But I don't know if we're learning too much in the next couple of weeks. So thank you all for watching, and I'll say goodbye until next week.